Welcome to Quick and Early Miracles. Today I will be talking about what's your scurry, and this is how to bring more awareness to yourself, your life, and what's happening around you. So, Trav, is that you? Trav and Ronnie, oh God, this is exciting. So I tried to start this presentation a little earlier, but I got really excited and started running in a direction and forgot where I was running and why. And then I found it and I forgot again. So here we are. So what's your scurry? This is about how you may be hiding from yourself or your emotions or your past or your feelings or your fears or hey. And when you're scurrying around, it's real tough to see shit because you're scurrying. And what I was talking about in the other, we'll say my first draft, my rough draft, was how our culture has created a framework, incidentally, maybe intentionally, I don't know, that inspires us to judge ourselves against stuff that isn't ours. And part of what we judge ourselves against is the idea that we should be perfect, that we shouldn't have dark spots, that we shouldn't fuck up. And when your mind, I don't really know how the mechanism works, but the gist is you'd rather not stand wholly in the awareness of your darkness, because what if you're not lovable? What if you're not good enough? You don't want to stand in your irrationality or your unreasonableness or your errors, because what if you see you and oh fuck, you're not worthy of love based on the ideas that you think you should be or could be. And so you scurry around. And you might scurry towards goals. You might scurry towards people. You might scurry in your mind by always having a problem to solve or something to escape. But when you're scurrying, you're not able to really see, because and I think that's a real cute word for it, because you're staying in the corners and where it's dark, because you think that there's something bad or wrong about you. And you might not consciously think that. You might not have any awareness that you're judging yourself or rejecting yourself on that level. The only way to kind of tell in that case is to look at your behavior. Are you always scurrying around? Are you never at rest? Does it feel uncomfortable to relax into your being? I posted a quote the other day from, I forget which mystic it was, but it was a snippet, and the snippet was something like, if you can just be here, you'll know the quality of your life. And that means you're not scurrying. And so you can kind of feel and see how you really feel and what's really there. This is very scary at first. I talked the other day in the guilt and shame presentation about how awareness is generally enough. So I have love here in this little light, and good ad. When you allow yourself to see what you're scurrying from, that's generally enough to kick off the process to heal or correct it. Sometimes we scurry because we don't know if what we would see we could handle or take care of. If you just let yourself love and accept the state of things as they are, then that generally will allow for them to move. So here I tried to draw a thumb, but I thought it was shitty, so I didn't use it. And instead I came up with this other sign, thumbs up. So when you are scurrying from something, or your mind is fixed on a problem. So let's say with the awareness thing, sometimes we hold our problems and ourselves in place again because we're not really sure if they moved, what would happen next. So it's like, well, this is familiar. I can manage this. I'll stay in this job. I'll stay in this relationship. I'll let these people be in charge. And yet you keep your thumb on the problem by thinking about how it's not right or not fair, or you don't like it, or maybe you're talking about it, or maybe you're worrying around it and you're trying to think like, okay, you could just leave, but instead you're thinking like, they did this, let me tell you why this is bad or wrong, until you keep your thumb on it. And so that's the same as giving it your power. You hold it in place through your attention and your focus. You give it your life. You give life to it by giving it your attention. When you take your thumb off of it, then it can move. So this is like an invitation to do thumbs up, and that's the same as whatever you're scurrying from. If you let yourself just see it, you can take your thumb off of it and it'll move. So for example, let's say that, I'll give you a real life example. So I was scurrying from a lot of pain that I didn't know how to feel because I wasn't, as many of us aren't, taught how to be with or allow for my emotions. And also I thought that if I demonstrated how I was feeling, that maybe I wouldn't stand up again, or maybe that I was weak for doing that. So I was just scurrying around from my pain, looking for something that would make me feel better, not realizing that it wasn't something I had to get. Like, it's all just allowing. So when I saw what I had to feel, I first made it a big problem. I was like, oh no, I have all this unresolved pain I need to experience. How will I fix it? All this shit I messed up, all this stuff I could do wrong, and I just kept my thumb on it, which was the same as keeping the experience of it present. I talked in my 2 presentations ago that instead of keeping your mind on it, instead of keeping the thumb on the problem, if you take the thumb off, if you take your mind out of it, you can allow yourself to feel it. So what was there was pain for me to feel, not an understanding of it, not a story about where it came from, not explaining to other people why I did the shit I did because of none of that alleviated what I was scurrying from. So there's something underlying, and when you allow yourself to be there and you take your thumb off of it, meaning you're not holding it in place with your attention as a problem, you let it move. Thumbs up, and kind of get swept clean. So I'm gonna just catch my breath a little because I got some good feedback the other day. Sometimes I run really fast. So I gave the example of running from your pain. You can also scurry from, like I was saying earlier, guilt and shame, where maybe you notice that you aren't where your peers are in some respect, or you're not, or where you think they are rather, or you're not, your hair type isn't what it could or should be. And so rather than being with that feeling or being and exploring what the thought is that's making you feel that way, you'll scurry and maybe find that it's easier or more comfortable to talk shit about other people or other things. Maybe it's easier to, thank you, okay, hey Randy. Maybe it's easier to, get really busy at work. Maybe it's easier to be super involved in the PTA. So if you're scurrying around, generally you're avoiding yourself, your feelings, or what's in your awareness. And what I talked about earlier is sometimes we do that because we're not sure if we saw it, we could really handle it. And I was saying that, don't believe me. I'm putting all this on your table. Pick up what you like, try on what you like, don't buy. From what I found, and this would bounce off other schools of thought like quantum physics or law of attraction. Hey, so nice to see you. Thanks for stopping in. If you keep your thumb on what's you perceive to be the problem, and that's the same as putting your attention on it or your mind on it. If your thumb is on the problem and you're saying like, okay, why did they do this to me? How am I going to make it okay that they died? Why do I think that I don't how will I explain that I don't have enough money to do that? How can I tell them, how can I make them understand? Like, anytime you're running around the problem with your mind, putting words on it, trying to understand it, it's the same as keeping your thumb on it. And if your thumb's on it, shit can't move. If you take your thumb off of it, which is the same as taking your attention off of it, which might be looking towards, well, what would it be like if that wasn't the case? What would it be like if I wasn't trying to fix or solve this? What would I focus on? How would I invest my attention? That lets it move, which means you aren't necessarily like responsible for figuring out how stuff will happen. You allow it to grow. You take your you go thumbs up, you let your awareness on the problem, and things evolve. So kind of like tying that all together a little bit tighter, what I was saying was, thanks for coming. You might notice, or I would say you could see this in other people more easily than you could see it in yourself. And I would venture to guess that if you notice it in somebody else, you're scurrying yourself. And so if you slow down and say like, what's my scurry? What am I running from? You might find that it's scary at first to allow yourself to really see what's there, because you might not know what to do with it, and or it might seem like you got to change everything to integrate or allow for that information to be a part of your awareness. It's kind of like if you see that something's spilled, then you have to clean it up. But if you're like scurrying and you don't really let yourself notice it, then you don't. So sometimes we'll avoid seeing stuff because we don't know if we'll have the skill set or the time, or we'll suck. So it's like, just don't look at it. But then you're going to scurry around and you'll never find peace. What I was saying was, if you let yourself see it and you don't sit here and say like, they spilled, it's a spill, oh my god, the spills, there should have never been a spill, what will we do about the spill? Did you ever have a spill? Let me tell you about your spill. If you don't do that, it'll dry. It'll dry by the light of the sun, and there'll be things for you to do, but they're manageable and digestible and bit by bit, which is to say, like, don't be afraid to see what's really there for you. It won't overwhelm you the way you think it will. Okay, I think that's it for today. Does anybody have any questions or thoughts or stories or anything? I'm going to tie it together one more time. So today I was talking about acknowledging that you might be scurrying. And when you scurry, it's really tough to see what you're doing and see what's going on. This is kind of like the same as like waking up. So as people are moving through their own personal bullshit, they're able to say like, and see things that are like, hey, wait, that's not quite right. And that's not what I thought it was. And the steadier you are in yourself, the more connected you are to your own ground, the less you're scurrying, the easier it is to see like what's moving around you and what might be better for you. If you're scurrying and you're not really able to stand still and see yourself and see what is, if someone's like, move this way, then you go this way, or you go this way. Like there's a lot of unconscious responding and, well, rather reacting if you're in a scurry. If you are able to really accept and love yourself, regardless of your shit, I don't care where you came from, what drugs you did, who you screwed over, like, if you can stand in front of yourself now and say like, look, I love me, like it's okay and I love me, then you'll stop scurrying around and you'll be able to take greater ownership of what you're doing, which will ultimately allow you to be a better person. But if you keep your thumb on what an asshole you were or what an asshole they were, or you keep your thumb on that stuff, then it doesn't move and it will continue to be a problem. But if you welcome it and you say like, okay, this was, then, and don't be afraid that it's hard. Like, it might be hard, but it'll come in pieces and it'll start to move. Then you'll stop scurrying, and then you won't be as afraid of life because you're not afraid of yourself. Okay, does anyone have any questions? So just let it all go and live in the present. That can be tough sometimes. Yeah, that certainly can be tough. The presence is definitely a practice from what I can tell. It takes, like, because you got to, I mean, it is and it isn't, because I do feel or believe that things can like instantaneously click, and at the same time it does seem that it's helpful to allow things to be a process. And if we're allowing things to be a process, I would allow that, you know, in some ways you're in a physical body with a nervous system that like learned how to coordinate itself to pick up this marker. You know, I'm not thinking like, do this, you know, like engage your bicep, extend your tricep, like I'm just reaching for it and grabbing it. Similarly, your nervous system is like responding to different requests the way that it learned to do that. If you learned how to adapt to people being overly emotional or unreasonable, or you didn't feel safe, like it, for me anyhow, it took a lot of time. It took a lot of time, if we're being real. It took a lot of time for me to take ownership of my response so that I wasn't picking up the marker the way that I learned to pick up the marker in an unsafe place. I had to kind of like retrain my body, retrain myself to communicate how to communicate in a safe place, how to, you know, eat, think, act in a safe place, and it just takes a little time. So that's also why, like, if your thumb is on your problem, it's really hard for it to move, because all you're saying all the time is like, I picked up the marker wrong again. I don't know how to pick up markers. I'm bad at picking up markers. My dad picked up markers this way. I'm always, no, that's not what you want. Like, that's what was, and if you keep your thumb on it, it will be that way. But if you let it be possible that it moves, if you think about what's working, if you start to focus on what you want to do. After you're good at markers, what will you do? You know, if you make space for that and you take your thumb off of what is, shit will move. Like, again, don't take my word for it. Do your own experiments. But if you haven't tried that, I would, because it really is, it's like a miracle. And it's not, I'm not saying that flippantly, like at a perspective level, at a neural network level. The more you think something, the more that you think something. And if you're always thinking from a place of victimhood, when you experience life, your brain runs it through that track. Here's how I'm a victim. Here's how I'm powerless. Here's how I'm that. If you take your thumb off the stories that keep you in the victimhood, that neural network will, like, neural pathway will change. And so that's it at a science level, but it's also true at many other levels, seemingly. Thanks for coming, guys. Thanks for coming. Thank you. Good morning. Well, just me excitedly saying, like, let it go. Like, it's okay. It's okay. Say it with me. It's okay. Like, whatever you did, whatever they did, like, when you take your thumb off it, like, let it be okay. It'll move. And if you're hesitant or resistant to do that, maybe ask some questions and explore, what do you get from letting this problem persist? Does it keep you in a place that's familiar where you might not have to risk a different kind of failure, or perhaps you're afraid of heartbreak? If you're fixated on making them the bad guy, or you the bad guy, or you the good guy and them the good, like, whatever you're fixated on, what do you get from that? And is that actually the result that you want to generate? I mean, let's be real. If you're alive, like, what do you want to do with it? You want to be happy? You want to feel good? You want to help other people? You want to enjoy it? You want to go places? Okay. So what are you focused on? Is that allowing for you to do that or not? And when there's so much wildness in the world right now, it's really easy to lose focus and scurry from like everybody else's stuff. You know, there's a lot. Let me see, how do I want to put this? How can this be put? The less that you're scurrying around, the easier it is for you to keep a calm, clear head and to consider the welfare of others and the choices that you make. If you're scurrying, it's really tough to see like how you're bumping into other people. And so if what you're looking at globally is upsetting to you, if you feel fear or concern or responsibility, from my vantage point, and like, fucks if I know, but like from my vantage point, the best thing you can do is get control of your own scurry so you can see what the fuck you're doing. And you do that in this model by allowing it to be okay that maybe you made mistakes before, or maybe you're not perfect, or maybe that, you know, you didn't like that, or you let yourself feel pain, you let yourself feel fear, you let yourself feel sadness, whatever is there, you just hug it all in. You're like, okay, buddy, like I'll sit with you until you feel better. And then you stop running from you. And when you're not running from you, then you can see a lot better, and you can see yourself and make better choices for yourself. If you're scurrying, as I did, from pain, you'll keep making more of it, because you're not able to, like, you're not making choices from a place of wholeness. You're making choices from a place of like, maybe this will make me feel better. No. From my vantage point, it's the same as like I was saying with faith. It's not something you have to get. It's something that you have naturally, or even with joy or love. It's a natural state that just gets pushed down by thoughts. That something, it's like, oh, I can't feel that because of this, or I can't be confident or feel faith because this could happen in the future. And all of those thoughts, they're illusions. You don't really know why something was. You don't really know what will be. And those interpretations hold down your feeling of well-being for no reason, which is so crazy. So that concludes my presentation for today. Thank you so much for coming. Does anybody else have anything? All right, so, okay, the last thing is